Welcome to the Lead to Succeed podcast, a podcast where you hear firsthand leadership stories, tips, and hacks to enhance your life and career. Brought to you by Zahi Abdeen and Usama Al Musa.
Welcome to a new episode of Lead to Succeed. In today's episode, we are going to cover the topic of coaching and how this coaching and this profession is going to look like in the future. Today, we are going to talk with Tracy Sinclair. Tracy used to be former chair for ICF Board of Directors. And I know, Zahi, there are plenty of things that happening, and it's to you. What's up?
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we last talked. I'll tell you what's up. I've been training this week, and today was one of my favorite topics, which is about change and change management. I usually do a specific model, which I really love, and I get a lot of engagement, a lot of interaction out of it, which is Rick Moyer's 3 levels of change resistance. I'm about to tell you about all these 3, and you can help me out, Usama, actually. So the first level of resistance to change is when employees tell you that I don't understand it. I don't understand change, and I don't understand why we're changing. So this is the first level, and usually it's the easiest level to tackle and to deal with. So as you know, that's a common response, Osama. What do you think?
Yeah, I relate a lot to it. I relate a lot from my experience now as a coach, as a leadership development consultant, and even in the past when I used to lead people and to be led also by others. Where here the key element is around how, for leaders, how they can develop clarity. I mean, how to educate and build up the awareness around change and why it's happening, what's the objective, what's the timeline, what is expected. The more clear it is, the more you put employees in confidence, so they will not be taken by surprise or to feel, wow, what's going on, no? Not to feel weird about it or hesitant. So you're making it very interesting. That was level 1. How about second level?
Absolutely. So level 1, as we said, I don't understand it, and as you said, we educate. We show the direction, we explain what the direction is, our vision of the change, and so forth. We can do training, we can do coaching, and so forth. So the second level is, I don't like this change. And this level usually is surrounded about fear. People are afraid, and a lot of people don't like to get out of their comfort zone. That's one thing. Secondly, they're afraid that the change will affect their well-being, and that's why they resist. And as you know, there's a lot of ways to handle fear, Osama.
Yeah, again, it talks to me personally. I was in this very big merger between 2 giants of the Fortune 500. And I was employed there. I used to lead an operations within the MENA region. And yeah, I sense a lot to what you've mentioned. And here, it's also the role of leaders, how to show empathy, how to support the employees. That for any one of us, that is natural. It's part of just being a human being. Empathy, support, working on the emotional aspect of employees will help a lot too. How about the third one?
So the third one, which is the most difficult, and you'll see why in a minute, because it should have been prevented before it happens. So the third one is when employees say, actually, they're not going to say it. They're going to feel it. They're going to think it, but they're not going to verbalize it, which is, I don't want to change because of you, the leader. And that's the most difficult level to tackle and to deal with. And as you know, when there's no trust, Usama,
You're touching the interpersonal aspect here, and for leaders, the recommendations to look at leadership as something to build it up early at the start. So try and open the communication, psychological safety, and how employees relate to each other and to the leadership and leaders. That's also a key towards the safety feeling of employees. So instead of anticipating or being reluctant, being with negative connotations about it, having psychological safety will relieve some of that pressure.
Absolutely.
Great, very interesting. And what's coming up next? Yeah, I know it's like an ocean. The more you dig deeper, the more you find there.
Absolutely.
So what's coming next is our interview with Tracy.
Yes.
I'm very curious to listen to her and what this industry of coaching is going to bring to us.
Yeah, the wealth of
let's go there then.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. We go there.
So, welcome to our second segment of our episode, where we interview a thought leader, a leader, current or future. Today, we're interviewing Tracy Sinclair. Tracy is a master certified coach with ICF. She's a trained coaching supervisor and a mentor coach, and also an ICF assessor. Tracy has co-authored a book called Becoming a Coach, the Essential ICF Guide, which was published just last year. So we're looking forward to hearing about this book from Tracy and her experience in writing this book. Tracy has also founded Coaching with Conscience. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here with both of you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So great. So tell us, what's in your heart, in your mind, in your hands these days?
Well, I guess if I start with my heart, what's in my heart is how can I really make a difference through coaching? One of the strap lines of my organisation is from aspiration to reality. And I believe that coaching as a way of communicating, not just formal coaching conversations, but coaching as a way of communicating, and some of the philosophies and principles of coaching do have the capacity to make a positive contribution to the world. And so that's where my heart is. It sounds a little bit evangelical, but if I'm really honest, that's sort of the place I'm at with this, because I do passionately believe that we need an injection into society of some of the principles that coaching, I think, can evoke. So that's where my heart is how can I do something with this way of working that makes a positive contribution. Where my head is really around how, therefore, can I practically make that contribution? So my heart wants to do it. My head then says, so what does that mean in practice for me? And I suppose in practice for me, if I think about what is the majority of my work in service of, it's trying to support people to be great coaches, because I do a lot of teaching and mentoring and supervising. I'm trying to make a contribution, therefore, to society, that the coaches that come into the world are the best coaches that they can be. And so my head there is really on standards and ethics and professionalism and integrity and all of those kinds of things. And then in my hands, I suppose, are the things that I do with that on a day-to-day basis. So the activities that I'm engaged with every day, every week, which is teaching, mentoring, working with organisations to see how they can take coaching more broadly. So all things coaching is, I noticed the word coaching a lot in there. So that's sort of where I've chosen to immerse myself now, really.
Nice. So
Great. Thank you, Tracy. No, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your background, you've done a lot. You have rich experience, especially with ICF. So, how did you land some of these, some of the jobs that you've done? Can you tell us a little bit about your career and how did you get to the point that you are at today?
Well, I've had quite a varied career, actually. My very first career was in teaching and translating. So I was an English and Spanish teacher and translator, and I lived in Spain for many years. So my world was immersed in education from a languages perspective, but also with translation and interpretation from a communication perspective. So I was always quite fascinated how words don't always translate into meaning. And so I then came out of that career because I came back to the UK and I got involved in international banking because of my languages. And so a very different career. But that taught me a lot again about communicating with people because my roles were largely around change projects, project management, operational management, where bringing people on board and engaging and supporting and motivating people was really ultimately most important. And funnily enough, alongside that, even though I was working in a bank by day, by night, I was working as an addiction therapist. So I had trained in counselling and addiction therapy. And so I was working with drug and alcohol addicts and their families in the evening. So two really different worlds in a way. And then I decided corporate life wasn't for me. And so one of my, I guess I'm a little bit of a free spirit. I like to do what I want to do. And so I set up my own business, which was in leadership development generally, about 20 or so years ago, which then really focused in on being coaching related when I discovered coaching myself in around 2005. I thought, no, I don't want to be a leadership development specialist anymore. I want to really start focusing in on coaching. And here we are.
Nice. Sarah.
I'm thinking of the saturation point. I see how passionate you are into coaching, and yeah, as you said, it's a key word today that came in different occasions. And also, I felt when Zai asked you about head, heart, and hands, we usually hear people to start with the head, but you started with the heart, and that is a typical coach, I realized. And Tracy, my question here, I know that you're very much exposed and you're part of those who are really helping in shaping this industry. And I want to go in this conversation to the direction of how to think of coaching with this global dynamics that we're in. I'm not talking about COVID. COVID is just an add-on. It started already with the technologies and all changes that we're going through. So how do you see this is going to shape coaching in the future? How do you think of it?
Yes, and thank you, Osama, because I think it would be so easy, wouldn't it, to say that the way we are today is because of COVID, and yet I completely agree with you. This process has started way before COVID, and there are so many changes in society, whether it's changes in the use of technology, changes in how we work, but also even changes in people's values around family setups, family values, societal community-based systems, spiritual or religious systems. There's so many changes that have been happening in the world, not least to mention climate changes in our actual physical environment. And I think there's been some level where people have thought, particularly with the technological changes, that coaching would almost be replaced. Coaches would be replaced by bots, and we would just go to AI for coaching. And I think, I'm not a specialist in that area, but knowing what I do know, I think that as with many ways of working in many professions, there will come a point where AI does replace certain activities and therefore certain functions and roles. But one of the things I also think sits underneath that is there's then a point when you cannot replace a human being. And one of the things around coaching is that, from a research perspective, one of the things that we know is that the biggest positive contributor to the success of a coaching engagement is the quality of the relationship between the client and their coach. That stands for so much before we demonstrate any form of competencies. And I don't know to what extent we can totally replace that with a bot. I think there's something about that human interaction that I think is really important. And in some ways, I think COVID has actually highlighted that. Even with, we're here on Zoom, even with this wonderful way that we can still connect over many miles like this, which of course is wonderful. With the lockdown that people have been experiencing, I think it's become very, very clear that Zoom is not a replacement for a hug, and so I think the same thing applies to coaching. And, if anything, not that I'm saying COVID, is a positive thing in any way, but there are often positive byproducts, aren't there, from a difficult situation. And I think COVID is almost the tip of the iceberg, if you like, of highlighting how something like coaching can come into its own and actually now become the positive contribution to society that we as coaches have believed it could be for quite a while. I think we're in quite exciting times for coaching.
I love what you just said, especially that I was talking to Sama earlier about an article I was reading about Zoom fatigue. And it just highlighted, and I'm still reading the article, it's a long one. And it was one of the things that brought, I wasn't aware of it and I never thought about it, is the way we look at each other through Zoom. Because we kind of we're really not looking straight in the eye. We're just kind of looking at pictures and around the screen. So there's a huge difference in the human emotions and the psychology of human beings when we look at each other's eyes in a physical way versus looking at Zoom. The same thing, the way we look at, like, whether it's a two-dimensional or three-dimensional, the way we look at each other is like that. Our facial expressions can also cause fatigue if it's not really present in a physical way. So love the way you said that. We don't know if AI is going to replace this human interaction or replace a hug, like you mentioned. We don't know that, but as of today, I don't think it does. I don't know about you, Sam. You shaking your head also?
Yeah, cookies will never taste the same way when you have them in person with someone or when you do it here at Zoom. Yeah. Taste of coffee is never similar. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I see this because, as you mentioned, much of the talking about Siri and iPhone to start doing coaching instead of competent coaches and the use of AI and so on and so forth. And what comes in mind here is the following, Tracy. How about the new trends? We hear changing the organization culture and going to the empowerment side of the culture that's based on coaching, new trends related to team coaching, group coaching, laser coaching, group circles. And so what do you see as, at least for the coming 3 to 5 years, what are the emerging trends that we would add to those professionals who are who are coach practitioners, professionals, how to think of the future? So what's emerging there? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Osama. I think two key elements to what you've described come to my mind there. One is, I think that we will see coaching becoming much, much more mainstream. Linked to what I said before about us being on the cusp of, I almost want to say a coaching revolution. I mean, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? And I go back to something like the ICF's mission, which is that coaching becomes an integral part of a thriving society. I think we're closer than ever, in the face of adversity that we've had, to being able to start to fulfill that. And so I do think that we will see more coaching, not just in formal, structured, contracted coaching sessions, but coaching also as a conversational style, as a way of communicating. And that is how it becomes an integral part of society, so that it's something that ultimately is for the many and not the few. That we are having coaching style conversations with our children or our friends or our partners, and not just in a formal one-to-one structured session. And I think that, with the changes of traditional organizational structures that are becoming much more distributed leadership, much more diverse, much more extended, and more of matrix kind of organizations, I think we're going to see coaching being an increasingly important part of that process. And I think that things like team coaching are only going to increase. I think that's a natural part of the evolution of this, in that coaching started out being something that you and I did on a one-to-one, and then it's gone to, actually, we can leverage teams here. And of course, you get a multiplier effect then going on, which is going to enhance the ripple effect that we talk about in coaching. And it's that ripple effect that then will inform culture within an organization or whatever system it is. So I think that those things are going to continue. The other stream, which some people might think is a little bit more concerning, but I actually think it's probably a good thing, is that I do think that the level of rigor and the expectation of what coaching, how coaching is delivered, is going to increase, which is very much, I think, something that, the ICF has been a strong advocate for since its inception, is that in a marketplace that is still largely unregulated or is more self-regulated, I don't know what you're noticing in your region, but what I notice is that the demand for qualifications, for more formal training, for some kind of credential or recognition, these expectations are going to go up. And so just because we have a marketplace that is perhaps more abundant with coaching happening, I think we will start to see a thinning out, potentially, of the marketplace of coaches, so that those coaches who are serious about their profession and have got proper training, etc., are the ones that will be able to take that forward. So I do think there will be some changes in the profile of the coaching community in that regard. And possibly also in pricing. I mean, I don't know too much about that from a specialist area perspective, and pricing is gosh, I mean, how long is a piece of string with pricing? You know, I have so many people ask me, what should I charge for my services? And I have no idea where to start, because it's literally, isn't it? I'm sure I can see with your nods, you know, it's literally from one extreme to another. And of course, it varies from country to region, to all sorts of things. But what I do think is that when you get any form of service that becomes more democratized, it does have an impact on pricing. I mean, we saw this with technology, didn't we? That in the early days, to buy a phone or a mobile or a computer was enormous amounts of money, and yet then the prices started to come down as it becomes more mainstream. So I don't know what those changes will be, but I could imagine there will be some shifting in those areas.
Welcome to our third segment of the first episode, that is the first half of our meeting with Tracy Sinclair. Zahi, it was awesome. It was interesting. So what did you add to your toolbox?
Well, Sama, I love the interview. Great insights about coaching. And this is our first episode where we cover coaching in full. So great insights. I would say the highlights for me was when she talked about human connectiveness, and where she said, you know, we thought that bots or artificial intelligence can replace coaching at some point, and she kind of put a big question mark whether that's going to be possible or not. We don't know. Maybe it's going to happen in our lifetime. Maybe it's not. So again, there's nothing can beat a human touch, a one-on-one coaching session or a one-on-one meeting that we're used to. That something that we really miss in the recent months. What do you think? How about you?
Yeah, I agree, and that was very insightful for me too. I relate a lot and resonate to what you've said and what Tracy said. You know, this connectivity thing, machine learning, and I know, and I can expect, I can imagine how smart it's gonna be, while the hard thing of a human being, this connectivity that you referred to, how can we replace it? Isn't it this is just me or you, or it's never generic, and when the machine has it, yes, it might add a value somewhere. I don't discount that. However, I cannot, or I tend to believe at least, us want to be generic, and that is added value that's gonna never be erased or superseded.
But I think here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna invite somebody to talk about AI in our industry, and that's gonna be one episode. We're gonna have to do.
I know the appetite is very big there.
We'll see.
It's a
something I probably don't understand.
Huge appetite.
It's going to be huge, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Great, wonderful.
So looking forward to the second half of the interview. So it's going to be as interesting.
Indeed.
Thank you for listening and watching our Lead to Succeed podcast, and hope to see you guys soon. And until then, have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Lead to Succeed podcast. If you like this podcast, please remember to give us 5-star rating, share it with your family and friends, and follow us on social media. We also welcome you to send us your ideas, suggestions, and any question. Our contact details will be found on the podcast description. This is Osama and Zahi, and until next time, make sure to remain authentic, keep learning, and to enjoy life.